Hi everyone. This is my presentation for ICM 524 Web Analytics Final on whether or not journalism should be data-driven. Today we're going to look at a few definitions surrounding journalism, a case study on one of the largest data-driven journalism articles this year, and what would have happened if that article wasn't written with the support of data. But before we can understand the importance of journalism by data or journalism by assumption, we have to first understand the importance of journalism itself. Merriam-Webster defines the act of journalism to be the collection, editing, and presentation of news through the media for the purpose of public interest. If it's done through the collection of data, that means that the end result, which could be an article, a video, or any other form of media, was created based on solid facts and verified research. However, if the act of journalism is done through assumptions and intuition, that means that the end result was created based on just that, assumptions and intuition, both impossible to verify without proof. I found this infographic in the Data Journalism Handbook created by Lulu Pinney that summarizes the contents of the handbook itself for those who are practicing journalism by data. It begins with the notion that one must understand the definition of data journalism before becoming successful in it, which we have already discussed, but the handbook goes a step further. It wants the person practicing data journalism to understand its potential, its limits, why it's important, and what it means to those receiving the news. The next steps to the infographic are titled In the Newsroom and Case Studies, which pushes the practicing journalist to review notable behind-the-scenes data journalism projects that prove just how beneficial it is to track down data rather than to rely on assumption to produce news. These steps also review how data journalism affects the media, inclusive to those reporting the news and those watching it. The final three steps to the infographic, getting the data, understanding the data, and delivering the data, describes the core sectors of producing successful data journalism: how to collect reliable, trustworthy, and verifiable information, what to do with that information, and how to properly disseminate it to the public. This brings us to our case study, the article, written only 8 months ago, Spies in the Skies. The article is about FBI and Homeland Security planes consistently and furiously flying overhead America, allegedly taking down criminals, tracking illegal trades of weapons and drugs, and catching human traffickers, all done through high-tech tracking devices, cell phone tracers, augmented reality GPS devices, and so much more. Now, before delving deeper into the article, let me revert back to Professor Hong's question of whether or not journalism should be data-driven. Yes, absolutely. And Spies in the Skies is a perfect example of how and why an article of really any magnitude, but especially one so questionable to the American human race, should be data-driven. The source of this article, BuzzFeed News, did an excellent job researching data for the creation and dissemination of such information, and it did so in good faith. Any article, but certainly one concerning the government, requires an extensive amount of facts, figures, and proof to be considered a reliable source of information. The quotes on the screen here are a few examples taken directly from the article that show how strategically BuzzFeed News conducted its research. Had this article been based on assumption, intuition, guesses, or hearsay, it would have caused havoc across the nation. People of all ethnicities and religions would claim that they were being targeted. There would be scares of potential terrorist attacks. The number of and extent of conspiracy theories would rise significantly, and the whole nation would be in an uproar that their privacy was being violated. However, because BuzzFeed News did its research and collected applicable data, it has kept the story in line with the truth. It obtained quotes from several members of the government, familiarized itself on the planes and the equipment in the planes, obtained government official documents from retired members of the government providing information on what technology the FBI and Homeland Security purchased. It tracked the routes of hundreds of planes over a span of at least 4 months, interviewed those who were believed to be the source of the tracking, and so much more. Now, there are people who believe that data journalism is too involved, too intricate, and too easy to misconstrue, and to some level, they may be right. Sometimes researching for hours, days, months, and potentially years at a time can result in nothing but a headache, a mess of information, and a confusing outcome. But when the facts and figures come together, a real, reliable story emerges that people can read and believe in with confidence. Of course, there will be the journalist who has seen the same outcome to similar stories several times and assumes that they no longer have to do the research for that type of story. But what happens when that type of story comes across their desk once again and they write the article based on what they assume instead of what they know? The story is falsely published, the characters in the story are misunderstood, the readers are angry, the journalist loses his or her credibility, and the story has to be truthfully rewritten. So clearly, there can be consequences to writing a story without having the right information. But most importantly, as mentioned earlier in this presentation, journalism is the act of producing content for the people's public interest. When a journalist goes about writing a story without having done their research, they can potentially be producing false knowledge to society. So to wrap up, yes, absolutely, today's journalism should be data-driven. Spies in the Skies is a concrete example of why and how articles of any scale should be propelled by facts, figures, direct quotes, and well-researched evidence. In today's modern media, there's far too much fiction circulating our platforms already for a journalist to risk assuming a story's beginning, middle, and/or end. So it's better to get the facts, know the data, and produce quality stories. Thank you.